All right, we're here at the 2023 Calvary Chapel Association's International Pastors Conference, and absolutely thrilled to be here in studio with Mr. Tommy Fretwell. Tommy, thank you so much for being here today.
No problem, it's a pleasure.
I know you're here from the UK. How are you doing with your jet lag?
We're still in the midst of it, so forgive me if I'm a little slow on my responses, but we're getting there,
Right on. Now, so tell us a little bit about where you're from and the church that you pastor.
So I'm the pastor of Calvary Chapel Hastings, so we are on the south coast. You go to London and then go directly down as far as you can go. That's us right there on the coast. We've been going about 16 years now, the church. It was a church plant originally at that time, and I was the first person at the church, me and my wife and the pastor and his wife, and that was 16 years ago. He left about 2 years ago, where I took over as the senior pastor. It's been a wonderful opportunity to see the Lord's faithfulness.
Yeah, I bet a lot of things. I bet a lot of things have changed since being a parishioner to the senior pastor of the church.
Yeah, you have to take responsibility for things now. I can't just allow someone else to do that. But no, it's been good. I've kind of always been very close, connected to the church, obviously being there from day one, and I was the assistant pastor for a long time. So it was. I kind of knew what I was signing up for, having observed it.
Yeah. Well, as a pastor, you're wearing a lot of hats, aren't you? So what were some of your responsibilities when you started in ministry? How did you kind of get broken into it?
Well, in the UK, in church plants, you kind of have to be prepared to do everything and anything that's available, because it's a very small church starting up, 2, 4, 6, 10 people, be like that for a long time. So anything from finding places for the pastor to live, finding a place where you can meet, setting up chairs. You guys know all the stuff. And we've earned our stripes going through all of those different things. Schools, community centres, halls, buildings, and I was a youth pastor for a while before that, so that's kind of half parenting, half taxi driving, half ministry, half everything like that. So you kind of have to get used to doing a bit of everything.
Yeah. Now tell me about your family. How long have you been married? Your wife, children?
So I've been married a while. So it's been so wonderful. I've just forgotten the exact number of years that it's been. But so I met Sarah when I was just 22. I'd just become a Christian. She'd been a Christian a long time. Met her in the church. We got married like a year and a half later. So I think it's been 18 years now that we've been married. And,
and we were able to chat a little bit over the weekend, and you have 2 boys, is that correct?
2 boys, 12-year-old and an 8-year-old, and they're keeping us very busy, but they're great kids. We love them, missing them a little bit now, but it's all good.
Yeah, what are their names?
We got Jacob and Tobias.
Okay.
Toby.
All right, Jake and Toby.
Yeah.
All right, Jacob and Tobias. That's excellent.
That's
So
cool,
now in Hastings, what have been some of the let's put it this way, what have been some of the more challenging things that you've had to endure over your tenure at Calvary Chapel?
Wow. So, I mean, we've with the church plant, you sort of go through a cycle of ups and downs where you get to usually about 7 years, people tell you that you go through a really low period where the challenges just hit and you want to give up. And we remember that period very well. We pushed on through though, and the Lord's just faithful. He's always been faithful just to provide the next step for us. I think it's maybe not just in Hastings, the whole of the UK. It's hard ground in the UK. People hear the UK, maybe particularly here in the States, and they think of the Wesleys and the Martin Lloyd-Jones and these great figures from church history that we have, assuming that our institutions are still in their Christian, the Christian heyday like they used to, but it's just not like that now. I never really met a Christian until I was almost 20 in my life. That's fairly common. You can get into your adult life without ever hearing the gospel, meeting a Christian whatsoever. So therefore, it's hard ground, and when you're planting a church in an area where you're just going out fresh, it's very hard to get people in and get people responsive to the message. And I'd say the whole UK is quite hard ground.
Yeah, it is. It is. And I have family that are over there in ministry and the vicaries, and they've shared the same sentiment. Now, tell me about when you went through your challenging time, because we're going to have people watching this podcast from all over the country, all over the world, actually. And if somebody's struggling, like maybe when you said you kind of hit that 7-year mark, you kind of had a low point. What were some of the things that the Lord walked you through And then part B of that, like what would you say to somebody that might be heading into a season like that?
Sure. So it was really me and Doug Keane, who was our founding pastor. We remember going through this time together. And really part of what got us through it was just having each other. We remember a lot of times where we would just be on our knees, just seeking the Lord and praying really one step at a time, walking through some of these issues. And I remember specifically, like we had one time where we were in a building. It was an old community center, and slowly they were, you can't use this room, you can't use that room, and we were losing people. It was a very, very hard time, and we were then offered another building, to which we actually said no the first time. And after a while, it was very clear that we made the wrong decision there. The Lord had given us an open door, and we didn't take it for various reasons. And I remember we drove outside that building one night, and we just prayed, Lord, if we made a mistake, just give us another chance. And the next day they phoned us back up and offered it to us again. And that was just a great sort of stamp of God's confirmation on the church and on the ministry.
Yeah.
And also that we make mistakes, and the Lord knows. He's not surprised by them, and He's faithful and gracious to give you more opportunities as you confess and seek Him.
Yeah, I think often in ministry, like, oh Lord, please help me not hinder what you want to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we seek the Lord's wisdom. We ask God for His grace, and we need it a lot. And for those that are watching right now, I'm wondering if you're struggling, if you're having a difficult time, maybe there just needs to be a pressing in with prayer and seeking the Lord and asking for the Lord to provide. Because really, it's nothing for the Lord to do anything with anyone at any time, And so that's an amazing story, firsthand account of the Lord being faithful to you, and then helping you get into a new place and a new church. And also, I think you touched on the importance of godly friendship too. I know you said that you were there with Doug, but what role do you think having other friends that are in the ministry or pastors, do you think that those kind of relationships are important to have?
Yeah, I'd say they're absolutely vital, and we maybe feel this particularly in the UK because you come here and you see there's hundreds, if not thousands of them, but it's not like that in the UK. So those few fellowships where you have those fellow shepherds, it's really important that you get together and are open with each other. This is something the Lord's been teaching us in our church with my leadership team at Calvary Hastings too, that it's very easy to keep things and bottle them up to yourself. You think you're the pastor, you have to take everything. You don't want to share some stuff, but with your leadership team, the more open and honest you are, the better you can bear each other's burdens, intercede for each other in prayer, and do all the things you need to do. So those friendships are vital. You probably know it's often said, isn't it, that it's a lonely life being a shepherd in some respects, but I wonder sometimes if we make it more lonely than it needs to be with not recognizing the people that the Lord's placed around us.
Yeah, that's a great point, because I do think that we can kind of unintentionally segregate ourselves from other people. We're busy about the work of the Lord. We're doing what we're called to do. We're bearing these burdens, and we feel like that we don't have anybody that we can relate to. And that's why I think even conferences, whether it's, I know you have been a part of the Teach the Word conference in Oxford and other things that you have partnered with other Calvary chapels in the UK. I just think that speaks to the importance of having like-minded men in ministry that are pastors that you can count on as friends, that you can ask for prayer over things. And I just want to encourage anybody that might be listening or watching that if you have found yourself isolated, to make an effort to get in relationships with other Calvary chapels and start maybe being that friend that you need to be for somebody else.
Amen.
I wanted to kind of pivot just a little bit and talk about not just Calvary Chapel Hastings, but I wanted to touch on the Ezra Foundation.
Sure.
So tell me a little bit about the genesis for that foundation and what it really stands for.
Sure, no problem. So the Ezra Foundation is a ministry that I started. It was really an outgrowth of my Ph.D. studies, which were focusing on Israel, Zionism, replacement theology, supersessionism, and all related issues that come with that. It's been a subject I've been interested in almost since the first day I became a Christian. And me and my family, has been a topic that we've always been very, very involved in. So that's why it led me to study these things in depth. And the Ezra Foundation was born as a way to maybe take some of that PhD work and put it into a format that's actually going to benefit the church, and particularly focusing on this maybe in the UK, but and also globally, the generation that's coming up now in the church that maybe haven't received good teaching and good theology about the place and purposes of Israel, and therefore they're forming their opinions maybe based on political affiliation or just through the news media. And it was my desire to really make sure that people were first forming their opinions from the Bible, from theology, really, and then from that they can outwork, and their whole worldview will help them interpret what's going on in the world and have a better understanding of these things.
Yeah, with in light of the current events, like real current, within the last handful of weeks, we've seen the rise of anti-Semitism. Just globally. We also have seen a resurgence of this replacement theology entering into the church as a whole in general. And it's really dangerous, I believe. And I think it's something that has led people astray. And I think that it's very, very important. And even you touched on generations being, raised up if they're in public school systems or in our college universities where, these just hateful things towards the people of Israel. And then they forget that, why is the church so concerned with Israel? Well, it's like, Jesus was born in Israel. He was raised in Israel. He did ministry in Israel. He was crucified in Israel. He rose again. He ascended to heaven from Israel, and he's coming again to Israel. And so that's kind of a big deal for us as the church. So what have you seen that in light of current events, like what, from your perspective in your studies and your Ph.D. work, what's your perspective on the things that are happening right now around the world? Yeah,
so obviously it's heartbreaking to really watch both what is going on in Israel, and I've had quite a few conversations with people in Israel that have heard some of this stuff firsthand. It's heartbreaking. And then also to see the reaction across the world has also been something that I found, again, heartbreaking, but also quite fascinating. And for me, it actually affirms the truth of the Bible, because there's so many passages, like the theme of anti-Semitism in the Bible. It's a theme of eschatology and also just a general doctrine that the nations are going to come against Israel, and I mean I call it the unseen war. This is my term for it. That when you see these things happening in the physical, there must be a reason for it outside of just what is happening, because it seems to be different from most other things in the world. This ongoing, they call anti-Semitism the longest hatred. It's been there since the Jewish people became a nation. We saw it as soon as they came out out of Egypt as a nation. The Amalekites started to attack them. Literally happened on the first day they came out of Egypt as a nation, and it's been going ever since. And that tells us something, that there's something more going on, and it shows us behind the scene that this is actually satanic. It is Satan that wants to attack God ultimately, and because they are a people formed by a covenant with God, and God's name is on them, they're kind of the closest thing that he can get to attack God in that respect, and that's part of the spiritual purpose for anti-Semitism. And we need to understand that when we look around the world and we see these things going on. It's a spiritual battle. We need to be interceding for them in prayer. Just like when they were fighting the Amalekites, Moses, he sent Joshua down into the battlefield, but he went up to the mountain and he took Aaron and Hur with him, and they prayed. And that's the thing that we need to be focusing on there.
That's right. We wrestle not against flesh and blood. There is a spiritual battle, and it's often manifested in the physical realm. I agree with that. So as we conclude, what would be an area of need for prayer for Calvary Chapel Hastings?
So we are really focused on, well, not focused on loads of different things, but one thing we'd like prayer on is outreach. Ways that are effective to do outreach. And also we're just pioneering sort of a new youth group for the church. That's kind of, we had a youth group, they all grew up, went away, or went into the main church, and now we've got the younger generation who is like my children and things coming up, and we need people serving in that ministry. I want to see them just blessed, and actually, you probably know there's all these movements and terms about young people falling away from the faith these days and just walking away. We want to make sure they're rooted and grounded in the Word of God, that they can be witnesses, and that the Lord's just going to bless them, and they'll be future worship leaders and pastors and people serving in the church, and that's really
wonderful.
What I want to see.
Well, right on. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. This is Pastor Tommy Fretwell from Calvary Chapel Hastings, and again, I'm Garid Beeler, closing out for the 2023 Senior Pastors International Conference here at Calvary Chapel Golden Springs. God bless you, Tommy. Thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you.